Welcome to this series on Datasets and Perspectives in PowerHEDA. I am Evan from the IDSC training team, and I will be your guide in this tutorial. Datasets and Perspectives. Navigate to the Dataset Manager by clicking on the Tools icon, then find Dataset Manager in the Datasets group. The Dataset Manager opens a list of available datasets. Datasets are a visual tool that allows the user to build a SQL query by selecting fields from any of the available databases. Datasets allow calculated fields and calculated measures to be created. Many SQL functions are simplified to make it easy to prepare a dataset and use it in a perspective to feed the dashboard, the SQL report, or the cube report. A perspective is a layer of a dataset that maps to selected fields and measures in the dataset. The Dataset Manager screen gives the option to display groups. This option toggles the display of groups in the list. Groups are assigned when the dataset is created. By default, the groups are not displayed in this list and cannot be searched on. Groups are defined in the database rules, available on the Tools menu. The magnifier icon allows a preview of the query in the dataset selected. A few sample lines can be viewed, or the query can be refreshed in this view. The remove icon will delete the selected dataset. This action cannot be undone. The edit icon or pencil icon is where we can edit the selected dataset. The refresh database structure will refresh the database structure in the query builder. Any changes that have been made will be reflected in the new database structure. To create a new dataset, click on the Add Dataset button. When creating a new dataset, we enter information that will be linked to this dataset for the duration of its lifespan. Enter a name and optional description. A dataset type must be set for each dataset created. The general dataset type must be set for datasets that will be used to create a dashboard. Datasets must be mapped to a data group. This will create a logical grouping of datasets and allows for searching and management of datasets. User roles can be assigned to this dataset. This will assign access permissions on a role-based. Once you are satisfied with your selections, click on the Save button. The Query Builder will now open. The Query Builder screen consists of three main sections: the query objects, where tables will be selected from available databases. The query objects can be docked or unpinned to create more space to be available for selecting of columns. The data canvas is where columns will be selected from tables, and the data grid is where the selected columns can be manipulated for the SQL query. The Datasets Tools menu provides additional functionality to the dataset or user from this screen. From this menu, you can create a new dataset, which is what we are doing in this query builder. You can import an Excel document into a SQL table. See the video tutorial on Import Excel Table into PowerHEDA for more information. From this menu, you can export this dataset query result to Excel. Excel will recognize this dataset as the source data, and it will be possible to refresh the data directly from the database from within Excel. See the video tutorial on Export a Dataset to Excel for more information. From this menu, we can navigate to the database rules to create or manage database rule. The database rule is where PowerHEDA establishes connections with data at a column level, table level, or database level. From this menu, you can always also refresh the database structure. When a new database rule is created, the database structure must be refreshed so that all new connections are available in the query objects tree in the query builder of the dataset. The Query tab is the visual tool used to build a dataset. The query objects lists all databases and tables that have been made available using the database rules function in PowerHEDA. Tables can be selected and dragged from the query objects to the data canvas. For multiple tables, joins need to be applied between tables. Where these are set up in the database, they may apply automatically. Alternatively, joins can be created by clicking on a column in one table and dragging to the related column in the second table. Where errors were made, right-clicking on the actual join and selecting delete can remove this join. Inner and outer joins can also be created by selecting the options that are available when clicking on the join. Joins can also be created with tables by clicking on the chain icon on the table and selecting a table to be included. This will bring the table from the query objects without the need to search for the table, and a join is automatically included. To find a table in the query objects list, the search or filter function can be used where many tables are available in the list. Columns that are selected in the data canvas will display in the data grid. Click on the maximize icon to have more space available on the screen to make selections from the selected tables. Tables can be resized for the same purpose of making selections. Once all required selections have been made on the tables, minimize the canvas. Now, in the data grid, all columns that have been selected that will be used as measures need to be aggregated for a measure. PowerHEDA will apply grouping by default to all selected columns. Click on the Maximize icon for the data grid to have more space available. Once you are satisfied, click on the Save button. Then, click on OK. In the Data Grid section of the Query Builder, click on the Delete icon to delete the selected column with its modifications. This action cannot be restored, only recreated. The checkbox indicates whether the column is active and available in this data set. When you click in an empty expression field, there are two icons that display. The drop-down list displays the columns that are in the tables selected into the data canvas above. Create a calculated column by clicking on the Edit or Pencil icon. Here, a new column can be derived from existing columns. PowerHEDA gives two options to create calculated columns. The Case Builder allows a simple drag and drop option, or the SQL Editor allows a SQL statement to be entered. An example case statement is given, which is a simplified if-then-else statement. An example of a calculated column is to create a measure based on gender. Drag the selected value to the field. Select the column that will be measured and the option when this is not true. Click on OK. This will add the expression for the column in the data grid. Click on the Save button. Click on OK. A user-friendly alias can be set using the alias column. The sort type allows you to select whether to sort in ascending or descending order. Once a type has been selected, the sort order will be set for the columns. The aggregate drop-down list offers a list of useful SQL aggregate functions. It is important to select your aggregate for your measures. Grouping is applied by default to all columns unless an aggregate function is specifically indicated. Criteria can be applied to any column by clicking on the drop-down box for where the criteria will be applied. Clicking on the edit icon or pencil icon will open the custom expression editor, where you can select a condition and the values to apply against the condition. The selected values will be filtered in this dataset. Minimize the data grid and click on the Save button once you are satisfied with all your selections. Click on OK. The Query Builder includes a few advanced functions. For more information, see the PowerHEDA tutorial on Advanced Dataset Functions. Very briefly, to add a common table expression is an advanced function. Adding a CTE specifies a temporary named result set known as a common table expression. Visually, this will create a blank table in the data canvas and a new subquery. A subquery is a query that is nested inside the query or inside another subquery. The query properties is also an advanced function. This sets overall properties that are applicable to the entire query. This should only be used to build a query that can be reused outside of PowerHEDA. It is not required to build datasets. Using unions is an advanced function. In SQL, the union clause combines the result of two SQL queries into a single table of all matching rows. The two queries must result in the same number of columns and compatible data types in order to unite. Duplicate records are automatically removed unless union all is used. Calculated measures can be created and edited in the Calculated Measures tab. Enter a name for your calculated measure. Select the type of calculated measure to be created from the list of options in the drop-down box. The numerator and denominator are used by the SQL query to calculate the calculated measure. A description may be entered as an option for this calculated measure. If a keystat image is selected, the file name will default here in the description box. This keystat image will be associated with this calculated measure and can be included in your dashboard where this calculated measure is used. Click on the Remove icon to delete the calculated measure. This action cannot be undone. Click on the Save button. Click on OK. In the KPI Mapping tab, key performance indicators can be mapped to this dataset. KPIs must first be created in PowerHEDA. Then they can be mapped to your dataset so that they become available for use on your dashboard or anywhere where the dataset will be used. The first section of the screen is the KPI level and column mapping. Here, the levels are mapped to fields that will display as code, name, or abbreviation. The next section is the KPI mappings. Here, a dataset column is mapped to a KPI that has been set up in PowerHEDA. Click on the Save button. Click on OK. A perspective is a layer of a dataset that maps to selected fields and measures in the dataset. The default perspective is automatically created and updated when the dataset is amended and updated. Enter a keyword to search for a specific perspective if the list allows so. To add a new perspective, click on the Add Perspective button. Enter a name for your perspective. click on the Save button. All the fields that have been created or that are available in the query will now be available to this perspective. Fields can be selected to be included in this perspective. This perspective will now be a subset of the dataset or the default perspective that includes all the available columns in this dataset. Click on the Save button. Click on OK. The Return button will return to the list of perspectives for this dataset. Each dataset may contain multiple perspectives. Use the Edit icon or pencil icon to edit the fields and measures in the selected perspective. The Remove icon will delete this perspective. This action cannot be undone. The Report icon opens a list of related reports. Related reports can be created here in the perspective for the specific perspective or from the Tools menu. The magnifier displays the available viewers for this report layout. The Remove icon will delete this related report. The Edit icon or pencil icon will edit the selected report layout. Here, columns that have been selected in this perspective may be added as rows, columns, or values where the measures can be displayed. This now creates a SQL report that has a customized layout linked to a perspective which is linked to a dataset. The Preview tab displays a limited list of records from the database as defined in the dataset. The limited rows and column names can be checked for obvious visual errors or data quality. To reflect all recent changes, click on the Refresh Preview button. The query statement displays the SQL query that will extract, transform, and load the data from the data sources into the dataset. This query can be copied and reused anywhere else. You can also paste a predefined SQL query here when creating a new dataset to set up all the requirements of the query. Thank you for watching. If you have any further questions or any feedback on this tutorial, please send an email to support@idsc.co.za.